Welcome to another episode of Taking the Leap podcast, where I dive into the stories of innovators and trailblazers who are shaping the future of their industries. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a special guest, my good friend Adam Hancock, who is a national award-winning State Farm agent from Montrose, Colorado. Adam has a wealth of experience as a third-generation State Farm agent and national award recipient of their prestigious President's Club. Adam got his professional start in the United States Navy and also owned a landscaping business before following his family's footsteps into the insurance industry. Adam studied engineering at Colorado Mesa University and has his Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Management from the University of Phoenix. In this conversation, we're going to explore Adam's journey from the United States Navy to State Farm, and then the key questions that young people, mid-career professionals, and those nearing retirement should be asking about their insurance coverages and the needs that they have for the stage of life that they're in. I'm really interested in unpacking these questions and many more to ensure that our listeners have the proper protections for their families and that your long-term objectives are being met. I'm excited to learn more from Adam, so let's go ahead and jump right in. I want to talk a little bit about the adrenaline rush that you've had in life. Not only are you a world-class entrepreneur in a number of different areas, but you're one of the nation's top State Farm reps, and I want to dive into a little bit of that. And we've had some people who knew that we were going to be having this conversation and send in some questions. I'm really interested on your insight and perspective on how people can start out their career on the right way, but also for those who are, mid-career and maybe entering into retirement, what they can be doing and how things change in our life over the course of, the years. But just to get a little bit of an understanding of your background, you kind of got your start in the professional world like I did, which was joining the military. And you're a very proud Navy veteran. So tell me a little bit about that background and what caused you to join the Navy and want to serve your country.
We were just in the midst of going into Desert Storm, and we were, a couple, three or four of us young men were anxious, if you will, wanted to serve our country, wanted to go out there and fight the good fight, and just go out there and protect our families and change the world a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny now that I've said that there was only two of us out of that group of like six that actually enlisted. And but yeah, so went to basic out in San Diego and did some work out there, getting ready. And then I did they call it A school in the Navy. So I went to school for firefighting school. And so I was a firefighter and a welder. And so from there, I caught my ship. It was actually in the middle of the Atlantic heading over there. And so caught my ship and spent several years over really just bobbing over in the Red Sea there and
Wow.
in that area. Yeah.
How did it mold and frame you as a young man?
Yeah, at the moment, full transparency, it was hard. We didn't see port for 180 days. It was they were shooting over the top of us, and it was a very difficult time. And there was a little homesickness and all the stuff, right? As a young man, the coolest part about that though is it really helped shape me into the man that I became, and understanding, process and how to work through things and how to continue to move forward and grow. And it's funny, the first class petty officer that I served with just texted me this morning and he's like, "Hey, I'm about to retire." So he's been in for 30 plus years, right? And he's going to come out and visit us. But it's just that that type of mentality of truly protecting and helping families
Mhm.
and going at it.
Yeah, so I know for me, I always had this like desire to want to serve my country, and of course, I think the marketing that the military does, especially for young men, of like, hey, here's the adventure, right? And you can do anything. The Army has the Army of One. Air Force was always aim high. And what was it? What was the slogan for the Navy? What did you guys have for the Navy? Was it a lot of times it's like see the world, and
See the
we
world.
we
Yep,
we,
that's
we
exactly
protect the
what it was. See the
world's we
world.
protect the world's seas. And the Marine Corps is, the few, the proud. So they do a great job of marketing, I think. And after I served, I just had this innate like just love of wanting to be able to help people, be a part of a mission that was bigger than myself, serve a cause that was bigger than myself. Anybody who asks me over the years, hey, should my son or daughter serve? Or young people have said, hey, what do you think? Should I go serve? And I've always told them, I said, it was one of the best decisions of my life. It radically changed my outlook. It allowed me to see the world, experience new things, have probably leadership opportunities that you and I would not have had at that young age until we got well into our 30s or 40s and maybe the professional sector. So it's such a molding and refining period I have found for so many people. And for you, it sounds like you took those learnings and that desire to want to serve others. You exit, and you find yourself in a role where you're doing an amazing job with State Farm, serving families and serving individuals. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, I want to understand, like, you're exiting the military. You've got all these various opportunities in front of you. Why did you choose the path of going towards the industry that you're currently in, the role that you're currently in? What motivated you, inspired you to do that? What did you see?
Actually, so there's a little blip in between there, right? Where I came home from the Navy and I went into college and I was studying to be an engineer.
Okay.
Um, and in the summers, I started a landscape company, and it was a construction side of the landscape. So we installed sprinkler systems, planted grass, trees, bushes, laid rock, did all the things, right?
The hard stuff.
For building. And um, I built a pretty decent sized company doing that. We had $4 million worth of contracts. We had 57 employees. We were cranking pretty good for a or a small landscaping company.
Mhm.
And in that process, I was building some Home Depots here in Colorado. I actually had one on the western slope and three on the eastern slope over in Denver, the Colorado Springs, Denver, and Greeley.
Okay.
And so in that process, the company that I was working with ended up not paying me. And so they owed me about $300,000. And as a young man that didn't have a lot of business experience and such, I thought that I had the upper hand. And so I was like, well, I'll just pull my equipment and my guys off your jobs until you pay me. Well, unfortunately, they that didn't work. And it sent me into a tailspin of filing bankruptcy. Um, and that was probably the worst experience of my life, financially, in a space of I'd worked so hard to build this organization. I've worked so hard to create an environment for helping people and helping families and doing that stuff, helping my guys pay for rent and food and all the things. And what I discovered in that process of that bankruptcy is I really went to the Lord and I was praying like crazy. I was in a space of um, it really happened in the courtroom when I had to face all my creditors, and they were telling me, that they were telling me how bad I was and all the things, as a creditor
Yeah.
not getting their money, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a 23-year-old kid that was just trying to do the best I could, and it was a huge learning curve
Yeah.
for me. And so my prayer to God at that point was, Lord, please put me in a place where I can teach people how to work with their finances, how to plan for their future, how to protect themselves from things like this. Because I was so devastated and so hurt by the situation that um, my responsibility in that piece was that I should have done a better job of reading contracts and being prepared. I had a young lady that worked at a nursery tell me, "Hey, this company is known for doing this to the landscapers, so be careful." And I was cocky, I was young, right? And I was like, "Hey, I've got a solid contract. It's good. We're good. Don't worry."
I'm a likable guy. I'm doing a great job.
Yeah. And so speed forward a couple of years after that bankruptcy, I shrank the company down to just a handful of three or four of us, and we were trying to pay back as much as we could, and just wasn't going to happen. And that's when an opportunity came around for State Farm. I didn't see State Farm in the prospect of my prayers and asking for what was there. Um, I was chasing a young lady, just to be transparent. And
Well, that's a big motivation for many guys early in life.
right. And her dad was a State Farm agent, and he asked me to come to work for him. And so within about a year and a half of working for him, saw the light of wanting to be a State Farm agent and to work my own agency versus working for him. And so we started down the path of finishing my degree and getting into the space of taking over an agency. He was planning on retiring in June of 2020. I'm sorry, 2006. And so in 2005, I was in training. I was down in Tempe, Arizona, I did 9 months of training. So I had to leave my family and go down there and learn how to run a business. And State Farm does a really good job of vetting their prospective agents and working through that. So State Farm is in a space where they go through about 50% of the people that put their hand up for agencies. So 50% of them don't even make it.
They wash out like in the training program.
Yeah, they wash out. And it's not only in the training program, but they have a full year of running an agency. And if they don't produce the numbers and do the things, they're done, right? They won't get their what we call a contract. So we're independent contracting agents, and so
And you have a territory. Is that right?
yep, yeah, yeah. So like my territory right now is here in Montrose. At that point, in my career, I was in a little town called Elizabeth, Colorado. It's over there in the Denver market, and had about 8,000 people, and it was a bedroom community outside of Denver. And we took over that agency June of 2006. I got my contract June of 2007, my permanent contract, and then the space that I came from um, when I was hired by my ex father-in-law. He was in a space that they told him, his leadership told him, don't hire this kid. He's had a rough beginning, right? And with
What did they mean by that?
well, my rough beginning was I came from a space of that bankruptcy was fresh. My I had a DUI at the point, so I had I was a drinker, right, when I was younger, and so they looked at me in a space of he can't do it. Now, the really awesome part about that is that set a fire under me because he told me, he's like, I'm not supposed to hire you, but I'm going to anyways. And so his tenacity to go ahead and buck the system and let me come to work for him, and my desire to, be told you can't do it really lit a fire. And so I took that agency of his and turned it around. And we were producing more than anybody else in our territory. We were he was back to what we call traveling. So if you produce so much life insurance, you get to travel and do some different pieces. And so um, really turn that agency around in a year and a half, right? And then we spent the next year after that working through and producing financial services, the retirement plans and doing some of those things. I got my Series 6 license and really changed the perspective of how he operated his office. And in doing so, when I went to interview for his office, I interviewed against 47 other candidates. And so,
Really? Wow.
yeah, so it was pretty intense and it was pretty awesome because the space that we came from was we're going to show people that this can be done.
Mhm.
And so that first year in business, I produced enough financial services and stuff to travel within the first 6 months of my agency, and then I had the second round of travel already set up within the next 6 months. So I was on a big rush.
Help me understand what you mean by travel here. Is this like one of these like, hey, you've done so well that hey, we're now you've earned your way to the Maui trip where you're going to go and like have a little vacation with the family, but you're going to learn some extra principles and here's a little OJT. Is that the type of travel you're talking about, or is it like your territory is expanding and they're like, hey, we're going to now let you leave the home office and kind of travel around to get bigger business? What's going on there?
Yeah, so it's the first
Okay.
example that you
Okay.
gave. So like this year for all the work you do from January through December, you get to produce so much life, so much health, so much financial services,
Mhm.
mutual funds, that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you produce enough, they send you on an exotic trip. So like, with State Farm, I've been to Italy, I've been to Mexico, I've been all over the world with
Mhm.
State Farm,
Right.
and traveling 5 star.
Mhm.
And so this last year we just qualified for Maui. It's funny you said that. So we are headed to Maui on April 20th through the 27th um, as a reward for the hard work that we did last year.
Mhm.
And so that's what I mean by travel.
Okay.
So that first year we traveled to Mexico. The second year we had a cruise around Italy. I've been to the Bahamas 4 or 5 times. Been to Hawaii 3 times. So I've repeated the process
Mhm.
multiple times to win that trip, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, it's an extravagant time with State Farm, and right in the middle of the week, it's usually a week, 10 days, something like
Mhm.
that. They do have a meeting, and they talk about different aspects of the business and where we're headed as a organization and those pieces, right, from upper leadership. So
How much longer the Patty Mahomes commercials will continue to run? And yeah, I'm sure those are very helpful for your business, right?
they are actually, it's funny. I'm a Denver Broncos fan
Yeah.
through and through. Have been all my life,
Mhm.
and yet, like this last Super Bowl, I was cheering for the Chiefs, and they're not. They're rivals.
They are big rivals. Yeah.
And so, but it's because of Patrick Mahomes. It's like, well,
You got to do it. He's the guy repping me, man. He's putting money in the bank for us. That's yeah, absolutely.
he's definitely doing that for us for sure.
I would like to go back a moment in time and double click on your experience with the school that you had. Right, you said that you went down. I think maybe it was to Arizona or someplace, and they run you through kind of like a school qualification period to see if you have the right stuff to learn the trade, be in the trade. What were some of the things that you learned in their school or that resonate with you today? I just for the listener who maybe has never experienced that, what was that like?
So the school was wrapped around number one licensing, number
Mhm.
two repetition, really, right? And the biggest thing that I learned from being in that school was consistency
Mhm.
and and repetition, right? Our and just simplicity of making auto insurance as an example. It's not State Farm's not for everyone. And so you get to be in a space of being okay with no,
Mhm.
and being okay with that we're not priced right, or there's million different factors. But what's the one thing that you can do to keep moving forward? Well, the biggest piece is to continue to make phone calls, continue to make presentations, continue to fine tune yourself, to understand, hey, what did I say that took me off? So there's a ton of role playing. There's a ton of space where we go in and we talk about the different policies and different contracts. Because really, what insurance is it's a promise. It's a promise to take care of you or your family in the space of a tragedy,
Mhm.
right? Whether that tragedy is a simple fender bender or your house burning down. And the thing that probably drives me the most is the life insurance piece, right?
Mhm.
Where you've lost a loved one, or you've come into the space where they're no longer part of your picture,
Mhm.
and you get to it's funny, it's not funny, it's the space that I'm the one guy that shows up with a check.
Mhm.
Everybody else at a funeral shows up wanting a check, right?
Yeah.
And so it's truly helping families realize the potential and the need of taking care of their loved ones and taking care of all the dynamics that come from a funeral.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so what I learned in that space was you're going to get no's, you're going to get told things, just keep going. Dial the next number, meet the next person, and work on your presentation, work on yourself.
There's a process that they've honed and refined over the years of, hey, our best reps, our best insurance agents, they do this. If you want to have a successful business, just do this. And they're teaching you this process, and it's incumbent upon you to learn, right, to follow those steps, and then be like, okay, where am I in this process? If it's working for other people, you know, if you're not having success, where are you failing, right? And then to kind of
Yeah, exactly. And you can really fine tune it. And State Farm calls it the simple conversation right now.
Mhm.
And so we go through and have conversations with folks where we walk through. It's a step by step process in my office that we walk through and highlight different pieces of their needs and what they're doing in their lives, and how we can protect them
Mhm.
and help them live the best life possible. It's the realize their dreams
Mhm.
piece, right?
Where's a point in your career, maybe in this process, where early on you're like, hey, I feel like I'm getting all these various steps, but this one particular, here's where I'm failing, or here's where I'm not connecting. Do you have a memory of a point where you're like, you seized in on this spot in the process that you personally had to improve, and what did you do to improve in that to where you're able to grow to where you are today as an award-winning rep for State Farm?
Yeah, so it was probably in my second year when I started the process, and that was in the financial industry.
Mhm.
State Farm does a lot of mutual funds, retirement planning, and that kind of stuff. And I had basic knowledge of what was going on in the market and how to help individuals with that. Um, and the conversations were at best shallow,
Mhm.
right? And so and just like we were just talking about, how do I truly ask better questions? How do I dig a little deeper? How do I facilitate a conversation between a client and myself that will generate fruit in a space of helping them truly get what they want? And so in that process, I learned how to ask better questions and how to really dig into somebody's life and ask why. So tell me why, Bob, you want to do that.
Mhm.
Okay. And so why do you want that? Well, why is that? And so I figured out in that process, if I ask why 5 times, it truly gets to the root of their deepest desire. and what they want to have happen in their lives, right? And so that following year, implementing that change and doing that simple piece, really what that did for me is in 2008, I was number 7 in the nation out of 19,000 State Farm agents in the retirement world of helping clients retire. Yeah. So it just implementing that small little change and deepening the conversation allowed me to have um, better programs, better conversations, and truly to help people realize their dreams in a way bigger fashion.
That's amazing. Well, I want to dive into some of these individuals that you're helping, or we'll call it, we'll have a little bit of an avatar, right? A young person, a mid career person, a late stage career individual who's nearing retirement. I want to understand. You said earlier that there are certain people just like, hey, this is not the right person for us. This is, and it's really difficult for any business to say, you know what, this customer is not the right customer for us. And I want to understand who that is for you. But let's start with you asking these questions, right? So you have a young, let's say it's a young married couple, and of course, in the back of my mind, I've got my daughter who just recently graduated from college, and she's started her career, and she's married. Her husband's in the middle of medical school. They just have a new one, you know. Little Emerson's only 4 weeks old now, so I'm a proud grandfather. But I think of them when I think of a young married couple kind of getting started in their career. Imagine they're walking into your State Farm office, or a couple like them, and they're wanting to start out right. What are some of the things that are questions that you would be asking? And for couples like them that have gone before them, that have made good decisions, made the proper investments, and you know, what recommendations would you be giving to somebody like them starting out to make sure that they've got all the, you know, I's dotted, T's crossed, and they're starting out right?
So my office prides itself on the space of education
Okay.
and helping individuals, especially young people, um, make good financial decisions. And a good financial decision. So we'll start with the where what I call going in the garage, right? So we open the door to most of our households through the garage, which means we're talking about their auto insurance, right?
Okay.
Um, Most states have what's called the state minimum requirements for their for insurance,
Mhm.
because insurance is a uh, auto insurance is a legality. You have to have it to drive your car, so on and so forth, right? And unfortunately, younger people and most people, that doesn't include younger people, it's most people don't have an understanding of how insurance truly works. And so the space of, we'll use your daughter and son-in-law as the example, right? When they come into the office, I'm going to ask questions around the space of, you know, in the event that you have an accident and it's your fault, how much do you want State Farm to pay? And the answer that I always get is all of it. Okay, what does that mean? Right? What does that truly mean to you, all of it? Because in the perspective of, I want my car fixed, I want my medical bills taken care of, I want to make sure that the other person is taken care of and that their car's fixed and their medical needs are taken care of, and so on and so forth. Well, both you and I both know medical costs, car costs, all those things have just skyrocketed,
Mhm.
especially over the last several years
Right.
with inflation and the things that are happening. So when I talk to your daughter and son-in-law, the space will be okay. So you probably don't want state minimums. Here in Colorado, state minimum liability is 25, 50, 15. I don't know how many cars out there on the road that you can replace for 15 grand, but it's not very many,
Mhm.
you know? And so, and that's that last number is property damage. The first two numbers are medical coverage, you know? And there again, $25,000 per person, $50,000 for all the people in the car. Again, that's not a lot of money in the event of an auto accident.
Mhm.
You know, medical bills can range anywhere from a couple 100,000 to clear up to millions of dollars in a heartbeat.
Right.
And so it's really helping them understand the perspective of, hey, So you can have state minimums, and this is what your premium is. And
Mhm.
for a few dollars more, you can have higher liability limits and protection for yourself. And the big piece there is, so let's say you have that minimum liability coverage. The problem with that is when you run out of money and State Farm's maxed out their liability limits,
Mhm.
it's all on you now. So every dollar past that 25,000, every dollar past that 15,000 is now your responsibility.
The other party is suing you, and which they would have to do, but that they can and come after you if it's like, hey, here we go. These are my bills.
Yeah. Well, example, you have a $200,000 medical bill from an auto accident, what that was deemed your fault,
Mhm.
right? And State Farm paid out 25,000. That leaves $175,000 of your that's your cost,
Mhm.
right? Kind of a terrible story, but it's one of the things that I've realized in my career. Had a young lady, late teens, early 20s. She was she was terrible about paying her bill, and my office called her 3 or 4 times. We even called her dad. Yeah, and that's so that tells you going above and beyond,
Yeah.
right? To help her out. Well, the that night she had an auto accident where she rolled her car and killed her best friend in the car, and she was not covered. State Farm denied the claim, and unfortunately, the family that lost the daughter, sued the family that my driver, right?
Mhm.
And that young lady will be paying for that loss for the rest of her life. And the worst part about that is it was her best friend.
Mhm.
So she's already paying for it
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally, and now also financially. So it comes down to understanding what insurance can do for you and protect you, and that's what it's designed to do, is
Mhm.
protect you, right?
Taking the time to understand all the nuances of this is really important. Having somebody like you on the other end who's asking the right questions and taking the time to explain it so you can make a good decision. I've never
Yeah.
met somebody who raises their hand and says, I want to make the worst decision possible in my life, right? Sometimes,
Right.
nobody's there, but to make good decisions, you need someone who's kind of walking you through the process and explaining it. So um, your entryway for most young people is their car insurance. You open the garage door, you're helping them with the vehicle insurance. What are any other maybe insights or tips around things that people ought to be considering specifically with the auto piece? And then where does that usually lead in your conversations to the next spot?
Yeah, so make sure that you have the proper coverages on your car,
Mhm.
especially on the liability piece. The liability is the spot where it can hurt you the most, right? And it's the least expensive as you get. It's pennies on the dollar as you get higher and higher liability
Mhm.
limits, um, and so that helps protect your future in the event of a major accident or something that's your fault. Then we tend to transition over to, are you renting your home? Are you buying a home? Where are you at there? A lot of millennials are purchasing right away versus renting, right? Now, that depends on the different dynamics and the different metrics. So, like when I was in Denver, there was a lot of renters, but over here where I'm at now, there's a lot of home purchasers, right?
Okay.
And so we talk about protecting their home correctly and making sure that they have all the all the right coverages to, if there's a fire, to rebuild their home. If there's something that happens, that we just make sure we take care of them appropriately,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
And then, truthfully, then it gets into what I'm the most passionate about. And the way that I would talk to your daughter and son is, okay, so what happens if one of you don't come home tonight? What does that look like in your life?
Mhm.
And I know that's a scary thought, and I know that that's not something you want to think about, but it's a space that we get to figure out, hey, what does this truly look like in the event that my spouse doesn't come home?
Mhm.
And for your daughter, as an example, right? So she's raising your grandson. And here is a space where she's going to need some more time with him
Mhm.
to make sure that she nurtures him and takes care of him. So she needs to stay home, right? And so she shouldn't need to go get work. So how do we cover that finance? How do we cover that piece to make sure that she's taken care of. And I tend to use the age of the baby, right? So you're a brand new grandpa.
That's right.
Congratulations.
That's right. My name's Bear. My name's Bear. That's my grandpa name.
That's awesome. I'm Papa Bear.
Are you really?
I am.
Nice.
That's awesome.
All right.
But he's got 17, she's got 17 more years to take care of him, right?
Yep.
And so we look at what kind of income we would be losing from her spouse's job, creation, all the things, right?
Okay.
And I think if I remember correctly, he's studying to be a doctor, right?
Right. Yeah. Med school.
Yeah. And so his income level will be quite a bit substantially higher, right? And so we get to mess with those numbers to make sure that she would live the lifestyle that that baby would experience the same upbringing if he was not, whether he's there or not, right?
Okay.
And please don't hear me wrong, because I understand the importance of a father being in a baby's life, and a mother being in a baby's life. And tragedy happens every day. Car accidents happen every single day where it takes somebody out, right? And so, and vice versa. So,
But there's a tragedy there. Like to maybe sit on this point. There's already a tragedy. You know, a young person is going to be missing one of their parents, and so what you want to do is ensure that you're minimizing other tragedies in their life. It would be another tragedy on top of missing a parent if they were then, forced into, a tenement, and they're on food stamps, and they're not able to, go to the right school, or, do the various things that, had been maybe part of the future design for that young child. You're trying to remove some of that other friction that might manifest. And for Brandy and I, we kind of, did our back of napkin math. And, so what would it be like if, something happened to me, so my wife and my children are taken care of, and then vice versa? What's it like if something happens to Brandy? And I mean, I still may have my income, but I mean, I've got, a brood of kids at home, young kids. There's certain things. So there's like, hey, I need to make sure that we have proper support. And so it is a very complex kind of mathematical equation to figure out what is it that you're going to need should, one of the, providers and caregivers no longer be in the equation, right?
well, and especially in this space, I'm really glad you brought up you and Brandy and your amazing kiddos, right? Because in that space, God forbid it, I know that Brandy works hard, even though she's a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
She works extremely hard.
No, it's basically like 2 full-time jobs, right? I mean, if I had to hire somebody to cover what she was doing, it is 2 full-time jobs plus.
Well, and so think about that. So if you were to hire somebody to prepare meals, if you were to hire somebody to clean the house, if you were hired to pay somebody to take care of the kids and do all the things that Brandy does, if you paid for every aspect that Brandy brings to the table, it's astounding how much money it really is. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so it's funny. I get those guys once in a while, like, my wife, all she does is stay at home. I'm not paying for life insurance for her. Yeah, but you don't understand, bud, because if something happened to her, that changes how you take care of the kids, how you take care of your home, how you take it. You get to understand. I understand she's not making an income. Also, your life gets to change, because you're probably, so let's say now you're a stay-at-home dad, Bob. Brandy doesn't make it home tonight. Do you have enough life insurance to replace your income so that you can stay home and take care of the kids, and life is normal as it can be, right? It's never going to be normal again, because you've lost the love of your life. There's a ton of other aspects in there that we can talk about, but it's the space of, have I covered myself and my family to the best degree possible in the event of a tragedy? And so we have those deeper conversations. I use a tool in my life conversations where we have a tank, right? And that tank is a representation of all the income you're going to make over your lifetime, whether it's residual income, whether it's earned income, whether it's however the income flows in, inheritance, all those pieces, right? And so we take this tank and say, okay, if that tank goes away, how do we take care of all the things that all of your lifestyle that you've created and the lifestyle money that you spend, right?
Yep.
And so it's a space of truly understanding how people can protect their greatest value.
Hmm.
The number one value in somebody, I'll ask people all the time, so what's the number one most valuable thing you own? And people will tell me their home, but that's not the truth. It's their income, it's their lives, it's them. And so it's figuring out, okay, so if you're the most valuable thing, what is your worth? Where are you at? And what is your potential? See, that's the other thing that people miss when they're having conversations. Well, your daughter's making $25,000 a year. It's really low income, da 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 da. And they'll times that out by 10 or 20 years. And you're like, oh, that's $500,000. That's not her potential.
Hmm.
That's not where she's at.
Right.
10 years from now, she could be making $100,000 a year,
Hmm.
right? Or 250 or $1 million a year. We get to figure
Yeah.
out what her true potential is. Where is she going? What is she doing? We just said that with your son-in-law, where he's going to be a doctor. Yeah, he's probably not making a ton of money right this minute. He's in school, he's learning, but that's going to change in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And then 10 years from then, it's going to be even more significantly different as he practices medicine and continues to get better and do different things and specialize and get into a space where, you know, he could be the number one brain surgeon in all of the United States, heck, all the world. And
And so this is a
so
variable. This is a calculation that's constantly changing that you got to have your finger on the pulse on. You can't just kind of buy a policy early in life, set it, forget it, and just walk away. This is you need to be monitoring this fairly frequently. So how would you, the practical application for we'll continue to use my kids. They're walking into your office, and do you set them up with a term policy? Is that where you recommend? And then how do these policies then change? What would your recommendations be for them over time?
well, you set that up perfect. In our office we call it a life plan, and so what we do is we come in and say, okay, so here you are today. And this is the amount that you need. So let's cover the need, and a lot of times that need is huge, right? $1, $2 million worth of coverage, and they're like, we it's not in the budget, Adam. I can't make that work. And so, okay, well, what's your budget? What can we cover so that at least we get some of it covered? How
Hmm.
can we cover as much as possible? And so what happens in that space is we start a term policy, right? We get the absolute as much coverage as possible for the least dollars as we can. And in the industry, at least in my office, we call that renting. You're renting life insurance,
Right.
right? And over the next several years, we're going to try to increase that and then convert some of it into permanent insurance, cash value stuff, right? And so the very next year, 12 months later, we sit down and have another conversation. Hey, how's things going? How's your income? Has things changed? Maybe now your son's out of school, son-in-law's out of school, and he's, producing an income now. So dollars are coming in a little faster. They've also added some life insurance from his work. So he's got a little more coverage there. So the coolest thing about life insurance is it's stackable. So you can have life insurance in 3 or 4 different places and cover that need,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
And so it's really educating them on how to take the steps forward. And then as they get to a space where, hey, here's another idea for you to start moving some of this term insurance into permanent. Now, State Farm does an amazing job of what we call term conversion. So we convert it into permanent insurance without having insurability. So it helps them. So, we'll use your son in law still. If he comes down with testicular cancer, at that point, he would no longer be eligible for life insurance. But if he bought a term policy 2, 3, 5 years before that, he just converts it into permanent insurance and it'll go for the rest of his life without having to worry about that insurability piece. And that's huge when you
Yeah.
start talking about helping young people out with that stuff, right?
So having a long-term term policy is really beneficial because then you can convert that when the time arises into now is this would this be considered whole a whole policy or is that term
Yeah,
right or
whole life or universal life
okay.
or something like that. I tend to go towards the universal life
Okay.
policies. I love whole life as well, right? Whole life is you have a guaranteed face mount, and then you have a guaranteed premium. So, hey, I've got 250,000 of whole life, and I pay $100 a month for the rest of my life. Period. As long as I pay the $100, I'm guaranteed to have the 250. The universal life is on a different chassis where it sits like a or a term policy where it charges higher premiums in the beginning years and it stacks money and it puts it in the market so that when as you get older and the premiums get higher, it covers those premiums. Your premium stays the same, but it offsets it.
Gotcha.
The cool thing about the universal chassis is that you can stick more money in it and you can utilize that tool for some retirement stuff, right? Now you have to have a really good agent to know what they're talking about. Um, Unfortunately, there's it's you've heard the statement of a bad attorney, or an attorney's a shark, or the dirty car salesman, the terrible insurance guy. They're out there, right? You got to be
Every
careful.
industry has got great folks. Every industry has got people who don't know what they're doing. So you got to, be intentional in picking the right individual, right?
100%. You need somebody that understands exactly what they're doing and how to build that plan
Okay.
so that you don't mess yourself up. Because if you put too much money in, it becomes a taxable account,
Okay.
and it Uncle Sam looks at it as a retirement account, and then you're taxed on money that you pull out. And so it's called MEC, right? Modified Endowment Contract. And so as long as you stay below the MEC, you're clean, you're good. And if you go below that, what can happen is your policy can blow up because it didn't collect enough premium. And so it's really helping design the policy correctly so that people maximize what they're doing, right? And so, yeah, so when you look at these policies, we would start transitioning them over into a permanent policy, um, you know, mid 30s, mid 40s, and really getting into a spot because you're gonna have a space where you're not gonna um, you're not gonna survive,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There's only been one guy that left this world alive, and that's Jesus.
Yeah. None of us are getting out alive from what I've been told.
You're not alive, right? Um, so if you're open, I'll throw another couple of ideas out there
For sure.
that deal with life insurance. So, like I owned both the life insurance policies on my parents. So I paid the premiums. I wrote it when they were somewhat healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a little bit hard for some people to hear. It's an investment, right? I looked at it like a 401k or a savings plan, where as they aged and I knew that there was going to be a day that they were going to pass away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I opted to invest in a life insurance policy so that when they passed away, I would receive the benefits of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a little bit of a different take, right? So it's one of the things that I'm going to propose to my kids. All right, guys, if you want a decent life insurance policy, each of you cut it in four, right? I have four kiddos that can split the costs
Mm-hmm.
and run that. Now I have a ton of life insurance in the event that
I would suspect you do.
my
Of all
undue
people.
passing. If I disappear here, Bob, we better go search Andrea out.
Yeah,
There's
that's right.
something.
Well, that's interesting. I had never even considered that idea, but that's a really interesting take in, financial planning for the family. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's just another area that you can truly change the dynamic of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? We also have on the other spectrum, on the other side of that, grandparents buying insurance on babies, right? So, like you and me, we just had grandbabies.
Mm-hmm.
I bought for Wyatt, my grandson. I bought him $100,000 whole life policy, and it's called a 20 pay. So I pay it off in 20 years, right?
Hmm.
And it collects enough premium to take it out for his entire life. Now, the really cool thing about that policy, it works in three ways. So the first way is, God forbid something happened that he passes away, the family will get $100,000, right? The other cool piece is it can be the second way that I'm hoping that this will work for him. By the time he gets to college, there'll be a couple $100,000 in there of cash value in his policy. And he can use some of that to pay for college to help
Really?
bridge the gap. Yeah. Right. And then,
And this is a term policy?
no, it's a permanent
Oh,
policy. It's
permanent
a whole
policy.
life.
Oh, okay, whole
Yeah,
life.
it's a
Okay,
whole life policy. So it's a whole life policy on my grandson, right? Because
gotcha. Okay.
he's zero. Well,
Yep.
he just turned one. So he literally turned one 4 days ago.
Okay.
And so when I bought it when he was born.
Hmm.
So the premiums are really low. That's the other thing. The premiums are locked in really low because he's an infant, right?
Hmm.
Every one of us live on a timeline. Some of our timelines are shorter, some of our timelines are longer.
Yep.
It's just, it's a gamble, and the third piece to that whole life policy is by paying back those premiums that we took out of there, the cash value that we took out of there for college, over the next 40 years, if he paid that back when he got to retirement, there'll be $500,000 to $750,000 worth of cash value that he can use in retirement that's tax free. And that's probably a conversation for another day, but understanding how life insurance can be used in retirement to
Hmm.
offset your taxable income and your non-taxable income. So a lot of people use Roth IRAs today.
Hmm.
Well, Uncle Sam understood that. That's why he put caps on how much you could put in a Roth IRA. So Bob, do you know how much in a Roth IRA you can put in?
I don't know, is it like 7,500 a year or something like that?
Yeah. And 5, 10 years ago, it was 5 grand,
Hmm.
right? And so it in a 10-year period, it's gone up $2,500. And you and I both know it putting $7,500 a year into an account, that's good, but it's not going to outpace the space of what we need for income when we get to retirement.
Sure.
And so I teach this thing called the three buckets, right? The first bucket that you put money in, most people put money in, is in their checking accounts, savings accounts, that kind of stuff. The income that comes, or the interest that you build on there, is taxable, right?
Yep.
The second bucket that most people will put their savings in and really try to save for the future is the 401k, IRAs, those type of things,
Hmm.
right? And the thing that most people don't understand is they have a silent partner in that bucket, and that silent partner is Uncle Sam. And so when you think about when you get to retirement age, and do you think your taxes are going to be higher or lower when we get to retirement?
Well, I guess it depends on when you're cashing it out, right? So you would hope that your tax burden, you're going to be earning less, right? So your taxes are going to be lower. Is that right or wrong?
That's the teaching, right, Bob? So let me ask you this: do you want to live a lesser lifestyle when you retire?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. I don't.
No, none
Yeah.
of us do. None of us want to live less. Now, you would hope that you don't have a whole house payments and you don't have car payments and you don't have that kind of stuff.
So if you're pulling out the exact same amount of money that you're currently making, your tax rate is going to be the exact same.
Well, that's if Uncle Sam doesn't raise taxes. Now, we are living in a time when taxes haven't been lower, right? If you go back and you look, and you've probably actually done this, but if you look at the history of taxes, you would be astonished at what we've paid in taxes in our past.
Oh, we're
All the way up to 96% of a person's income goes to taxes. You're like, why would I even make any money if I'm if I'm paying 96%,
yeah.
right?
And the likelihood of everyone who's listening to this right now, with the we're running $1.6 trillion deficits over the next 10 years. That's based on government forecasts. We're already at a broken economy. There's two things that are going to have to be done. We are going to have to, as a nation, cut back on our expenses, right? We have to draw down, whether it's in Social Security payouts, or federal budgets. But there's no doubt we're going to have to raise taxes. We're going to have to do both because we're already at the broken stage.
Oh yeah, we're already past it, right?
Yeah.
It has to change. So when you think about 100,000 today, if you live on 100,000, that keeps the number simple.
Yeah.
$100,000 of income on an annual basis, you're at 39% of taxes, right? So $39,000 goes to taxes, and that's federal. And if you live in a state as beautiful as yours, Bob, where it's zero, or you live in a state where it's California and it's 18.
Mhm.
It's night and day different in the space of what else you're going to pay, you know. And so if you have some, and that third bucket, that last bucket is your tax-free bucket, right? Whether you put it in a Roth or cash value life insurance. And so with the Roth, it has a limit of how much you can put in there. But with life insurance, it's based on the face amount of what your coverage. So you can have a lot more money inside of that policy that you can pull out later in life. So I teach in that same drawing, when I'm drawing this out for people, I show people, like, if, okay, that 100,000, if you pull 100% of that out of a taxable account, you're going to pay, for here in Colorado, we're going to pay 43%. But if I pulled 50,000 out of my taxable account and 50,000 out of my non-taxable account, so I'm getting 50 all the way through, right?
Yeah.
And that 50, its taxable deal is at 25%. So I'm paying, 12,500 in taxes. And at that 12.5, from that 50, now we're sitting at, 37.5. So we're at 87,500 versus 62.
Yeah.
Which one makes better sense to you?
That's a great analysis to run someone through, so they see the benefits of it. And if I'm not mistaken, a Roth IRA isn't even available for everybody. I mean, isn't there an income cap? If you earn over like $200,000 a year, you can't participate in a Roth IRA.
Correct. Yeah. And so when you're in that space, where do I put my money? How do I get it into a tax-free space? Well, so that's where it goes into that life insurance. And that's why Uncle Sam created the MEC. In 19, or I think it was the early 1980s, they figured out that a lot of people were throwing tons of money into whole life and universal life policies, those permanent policies. And so they had to create some rules to make sure people weren't putting too much money over there.
Now, on the Roth IRA, is that for a combined household, or is it per individual?
It's individual now, and so you'll see, and if you watch any TikTok, if you watch any reels or any of those things, there are people that teach on, for people like us, where we're entrepreneurs, we have businesses, right, where you can pay your kids. You can make them an employee and dump money into a Roth IRA for them right now. And you can start that process of saving for them now, right? They have to be able to do work, right? Even if it's they do your mailing for you.
Yeah.
And so I had Hunter, and a lot of the people on here know Hunter because she served quite a while at the NTEs. But at 4 years old, Hunter was in my office putting the stamps on letters and doing the mailers for us, and so she was at work, earning an income for me.
So let's walk through. I've got so many more questions for you, but so we've been talking about kind of that young couple graduating from college, or maybe in their early 20s, starting out in life, and how you kind of walk them through the process, garage door into the home, into their life insurance. Is there anything else along the line that you are talking to them about, or do you feel like you've hit like the big buckets? Because what I'd like to also look at is someone who is, say, mid-career or starting to enter later stages of their career. Okay. So you could, let's talk about, guys like our age, right? They're late 40s, early 50s, maybe even folks that are older than us in the, we'll call it late 50s, or getting ready to get into their 60s. And I've had conversations with multiple people recently, who are like, "Hey, Bob, I just kind of have a private conversation with you. I don't feel like I'm as prepared as I would like to be. I don't know if I've ever met anybody who says I'm 100% prepared. I feel great. Check every single box. Everybody kind of, as you're walking through life, you always have that feeling of like, am I doing everything I should? Is there any other little check box I need to be hitting here?" But I have had recently a number of conversations with people who are like, I feel like I'm in a spot where I need to play catch up a little bit. What advice would you give for somebody late 40s, early 50s who are like, you know what, I've never really thought about this, help me get caught up to speed, Adam?
Yeah. So the first, let me answer because you asked if I would, for the 20-year-old,
Yeah.
if there's any last pieces.
Yeah.
So one of the things I have a chart at my office that shows the compound interest, right? It's the seventh wonder of the world, and it's the space of understanding how that can work for you. And so it shows two kids investing a couple of $1,000s a year into retirement, right?
Yep.
And in that space, the 18-year-old gets out of school, decides, hey, I'm going to go to work and start doing some stuff, and he's putting 2 grand a year away. The other 18-year-old says, I'm going to buy a car. I need a car first. And so he puts that 2 grand into a car. And then by the time he's 25, puts in 2 grand a year, right?
Yep.
So thinking about that, so the kid that started at 18 and went to 65, putting $2,000 a year in, and the kid that started at 25 and did that from 2000 to, 2000 in until he was 65, which one do you think would have more money at retirement?
Oh, obviously, it's the person who started earlier. I mean, I've seen these, like, just missing a few payments early on can radically change the impact of that investment because the compounding nature of money and how money works for you.
Yeah, and so that 7-year period changes the numbers at the bottom by double, right? So it's like $1.5 million for the 18-year-old versus it's like $580,000 for the 25-year-old. It's astounding how changing that is, right?
Yep.
And so I do tend to have conversations around, hey, I know retirement is way out of your realm, and that's not what you're thinking about, but it is something you should be thinking about.
Right.
Because if you take advantage of this time now, you will be light years ahead when you get towards the end of towards retirement.
This is one of those things that is like where it truly can be set it and forget it. Unlike maybe life insurance, where you gotta kind of modify this over the course of your life for your various needs. But if you can just have the discipline early on to just like, you know what, I'm going to open up an investment account. Whether it's whatever type of fund. There's all sorts of different options out there. But just religiously be putting a part of your paycheck in that every single month. Where you end up at the age of 60 is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I tell people to do a percentage. So pick a percentage, whether it's 3%, 5%, 10%, whatever that percentage is, keep the percentage.
Yep.
So, because what's going to happen is next year you're going to get a raise. And if you said, "Oh, I'm only going to put $50 a month in and I'm going to set it and forget it," like you said, $50 a month all the way till 65, that's amazing and you'll have great money. Don't
Right.
misunderstand me.
Right.
At the same time, if you decided, "Hey, I want to put 5% of my income in," and at the 10 years from now you're still at 5%, well, 5% because you've gotten raises over that 10-year period is substantially more than that $50 a month. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I've heard, I mean, a lot of the people that I religiously follow in this space in terms of just like investments, I mean, I've heard anything from the absolute lowest side, it ought to be 12%, 15%, I think is kind of like somewhat of the average. I mean, I'm looking at a book here, Tony Robbins, one of my all-time favorite investment books. But there's But is that what you see? Kind of like what's the national average? But I hear various thought leaders say, man, bare minimum, you got to be doing at least 12% of your income in investments, up 15%. Now, of course, there's people who will do much more, but that's kind of like really the minimum that you ought to be looking at.
Yeah, it really is, and um, it comes to taking care of future you.
Hmm.
I like to have the conversation of past you, present you, and future you.
Hmm.
So the decisions I make today are going to affect future Adam,
Yeah.
right? And I'm trying to set up future Adam in a way better place because I haven't done such a good job with that in my past for past Adam.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's affecting every decision I've made to this point has gotten me to where I'm at, and every decision I'm going to make today will take me into the future. It's just like you and me. We've got tons of books behind
Mhm.
us, right?
Yep.
It's the books we read.
Yep.
It's the things that we study. It's what I'm putting in to see what I can get out. It's maximizing that investment,
Mhm.
right? And so it's important to really get to that space of understanding what I want to have happen. And so, to follow up on your question about the 40 to 50-year-old, 60-year-old
Mhm.
that's on the brink of retirement, I call it the retirement red zone. So, we get to be very, very careful the 10 years before retirement and 10 years after retirement.
Okay.
Now, retirement's a really fluid thing for people nowadays. Biblically, it's not biblical for us to retire. Now, we may stop running as hard, we may change gears and go into a different aspect, we may be more in ministry, we may do some different things. So accumulation may be different,
Mhm.
but really in retirement, if you're going to retire and you're not going to have income coming in, we have to get to a space of replacing what you need on an annual basis. So there's two factors that really are big in this space. I talk to every one of my clients about longevity. So how old was your grandpa and grandma? How old was your mom and dad when they passed away? Are they
Mhm.
still living? Are they still running?
Mhm.
And then when we look at the medical field and what's happening out there, people are living longer and and being in retirement a whole lot longer. So here's the example. If you live to 110, 120 years old and you retire at 65, half of your life will be in retirement.
Mhm.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge
When you
deal.
when you think about, hey, I need 100 grand a year. Well, 60 years from now, that 100 grand won't be just 100 grand. We've got inflation to
Mhm.
calculate into there, as well as, you've got that 100,000 times 60 years. That's $6 million.
Yeah.
And so people now, over that 60 years, we can continue to have the money grow and invest it in the right portfolios and do the things. But the window that we get to make sure that we're really careful with, which this window is changing too, and Uncle Sam's even changed it on us with Social Security, right? Which, Bob, I can truly tell you, I don't think you and I are going to be blessed to partake in that.
Yeah.
I think it's going away.
Yeah.
But that means I get to do more planning for me to make
Mhm.
sure that I take care of my stuff,
Right.
right? That I don't lean on. They call a lot of advisors will call it the three-legged stool, and so they talk about savings, they talk about investments or retirement, and then Social Security. So that's the three-legged stool. Well, unfortunately, I think Uncle Sam's done a not a great job of taking care of that program,
Mhm.
which you and I and most of us have paid into for years and years and years. Unfortunately, they're in trouble. And you just said it at the beginning of this interview that they're going to have to at least cut benefits.
Yeah.
Um, and realistically, benefits will probably go away. If you look at the bottom of your Social Security statement, it says that there will not be funds in the account by 2041. So
So much for the lockbox. That was
what's that?
that so much for the lockbox, right? Remember, I forget which presidential election it was. A few, back in the day, was it during maybe the Clinton administration? They kept the one of the key phrases like, "We're going to put Social Security in a lockbox and not touch it," and be like, that didn't work out so well.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. So it's really imperative that we think about where we're at. So in my own thought process, in my own piece, I have really tried to generate an income where it's residual, right? Where I can have income coming in whether I'm at work or not. I'm sitting here with you today, this morning, and the office is running. There's policies being sold, there's insurance being taken care of, and I don't have to particularly be in the office. I can spend time with friends. I can do things that I want to do. So that's one metric. But the other metric is, hey, when will I retire? So honestly, I'm not thinking of retirement at 65. I've told a lot of my family and my friends that I believe God's gonna keep me here until I'm 128.
I love that optimism. That is awesome.
Right.
From your lips, from your lips to God's ears, brother.
Yes, sir. And that's 78 years from now. So with that being in play, what do I need to do to have income all of that time? Well, I don't probably need to retire in the next 15 years. I need to think about extending that out 5, 10 years, right? Um, and so that 40, 50, 60-year old, we have that conversation. When do you want to retire? What does that look like? What do you want to shift into? What's the life after work look like? Is it vacations and traveling the world and doing that stuff? Because that's going to create some additional need because you're probably not doing that right now.
Right.
And then if you're not traveling around, has the house paid off? Have we done some of those pieces? What are some of the big ticket items that you've taken care of? And then what can we live on? So you either get to save more, like you said. So some of your guys are coming to you and saying, I just don't feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm a little short, like I need to do some makeup. So I either get to put more in the pot, I get to be more risky. So I get to put my investments in stuff that has a little more risk to it. And you get to be really careful because you could lose everything, right? So that's why that window is such a scary thing, that red zone that I was talking about. Or you can work longer. So there's three factors in when we have these conversations. You're either going to save more, work longer, or
You get a little more risky on the risk curve. You go further out on the risk curve. I want to talk about that briefly because I just listened to a thought leader give an interesting analysis of where so many people in the global economy, but specifically here, I think in the United States, are at. And he referenced it and coined the term. It is financial nihilism, where especially within the younger generation, where they feel like the table has been just completely turned against them, not in their favor. And we hear about inflation right now being 3 or 4%. And it's like, well, that's just inflation. But I mean, over the last decade, we're running about 10% of currency debasement in the United States. So for you to be able to invest, your hurdle rate to make sure that your investments are outpacing the current debasement plus inflation, 10% plus 3 or 4%, you need to be looking that your investments are making, 14, 15, 16% a year just to
cover the bases,
just to be maintain par or be even, right? Because we're debasing the currency so rapidly and we've got inflation on top of it. And so when younger people are seeing that everything, the inflation is impacting them in terms of whether it's home prices or whatnot, they are his version of financial nihilism, which was they see investments that are extremely risky and they're just like, hey, you know what? I could save this money. It's not going to do me any good. I'm going to go way out on that risk curve and I'm going to place bets almost like lottery tickets, right? I want to place bets on all these things that are extremely risky, but at least it has the opportunity of going from, nothing to maybe, a huge outsized gain. And that's their hope, right? And so he was also kind of talking about that in terms of maybe some of the things that are happening within the cryptocurrency space, the meme tokens, why, you get like 18, 19-year-old kids who are like, I'm going to put $500 on, this dog coin or whatever, because they heard a story that somebody did that and made, $10 million. He's like, it's financial nihilism. That's why they're being drawn to that. I'm teaching my kids to be like, look, don't have this fatalistic attitude about the future. You can still make very logical, concise decisions in your life. Take all the proper steps, all the proper precautions, be diversified, but let's make sure that we've got all the bases covered. And for me and you, I mean, I've heard this many times that 60 is the new 40. I take a look at 60-year-olds in my life, my friends who are now coming up on 60. I take a look at what they're doing at 60, how they look at 60, how they're functioning at 60. And then I take a look at like what my grandparents look like at 60. It is two totally different people. I'm
And
like
different environments.
I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, it is like literally looking in ancient history books. My grandparents look worn and haggard at 60, as opposed to my friends today that are, in their 60s. And that's just within the span of like one generation, two
Yeah.
generations, right? But in terms of healthcare, in terms of the vitamins, nutraceuticals, the way that we're, exercising and taking care of ourselves, advancement in medicines and technologies, if 60 is the new 40, we've got to completely shift our mindset of this old school, hey, I retire at 65. Great, retire whenever you want to, but there's, like as you said, people are going to be living longer, more vibrant. The thing that I hear now more frequently is the encore career, right? So you literally, you have people, we have our college system was designed to be like, hey, let's teach 18 to 22-year-old kids what they need. It's a bucket of knowledge that they're going to leverage for the span of their career. And all of a sudden, these universities are waking up and saying, hold on a second, people are living a lot longer. They're having these encore careers, and they're designing curriculums and degree programs for 40 and 50-year-old mid-career professionals who are like, I'm going to go back. You know what? I want to do something different. I'm going to have an encore career, a different career. I'm going to get retrained, have a new certification, a new license, a new whatever, and I'm going to do something different in my 40s, 50s, and 60s, or even later. So, I mean, we live at this really, you can look at it through a lens of, oh my gosh, there's a lot of turmoil in the economy. And if you only focus in on that lens, it can be it's like, oh, it can be a little scary, right? Because there's a lot of change. But you can
Yeah, it can be
also
devastating to you.
yeah, you could also look through a completely different lens and look at all the opportunity. Be like, hey, amazing opportunity here. Here's what I'm going to have to do. I need to focus on my own personal longevity. How am I exercising? What are the vitamins, the supplements, the things that I'm doing so that I can be a vibrant, not just a 60-year-old. I want to be vibrant when I'm 80. I want to be vibrant when I'm 90, right?
90.
I like how your viewpoint of, hey, I'm going to live to be 128. There's a lot of people who are thinking that way, which means our investments need to be different. Our lifestyle needs to be different. But I want to hear how you, maybe when someone walks into your office and maybe they're mid-career professional and they're like, man, I feel like I need to play catch up, how you motivate and inspire and encourage and be like, hey, bud, it's all right. You got you got plenty of time. It's okay. Yeah, we want to take action, but this isn't don't be fearful, but rather let me show you a pathway of opportunity, of hope, of here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you back on track real fast, and you've got a lot of opportunity ahead of you. How do you do that for someone who might come in like maybe a little bit discouraged?
Yeah, so I literally just had a guy come in a year ago, last May, and he was in that very spot. He's like, I'm afraid I don't have enough for retirement. What am I going to do? So we sat down and looked at what he had, where he was invested, what he was putting his money into, how much extra he had for putting away, right? And so we actually tackled it from three different places. So we did take on a little bit more risk, but we put it through a calculator that kind of gives us the best advantage, the best amount of return for the least amount of risk. Now we did have to bump up his risk to get the better return, but it wasn't by, you know, they there's calculators out there that will tell people, hey, if you do this, this is the risk factor that you're taking, right?
Yeah.
And how much risk is in this portfolio. And we really do figure out where people are at. And so we give a test that it's a risk management test that we figure out exactly where people are at. And so, and then we talked about, hey, how long did your grandparents live? How long did your great grandparents live? And do you think medicine's going to get better from here forward? How do you think you're going to move forward? And realizing, hey, you're right, Adam. We've got I'm going to live into between 90 and 100. And that's where this guy was at. Right. And so, okay. So with that factor, we've got, we could probably move to 70 years old, work till you're 70 instead of 65. So that gives us 5 more years. We put a little more money in when we took a little more risk. And so we bumped all three of those up just a little bit. And when he left my office, he's like, dude, I feel so much better that I know that I've got a plan and I'm actually working the plan. And that's probably the biggest thing is that people will spend more time planning their vacation this year than planning for their retirement.
It's funny that I want to highlight this because here I've had a similar conversation with somebody, and this has been an ongoing conversation for a couple years. This is an individual who knows they're behind schedule, and is worried about it, but almost so scared and feels almost has that a nihilistic view of it. It's like, I don't know if there's anything I can do. And their way of dealing with it is not dealing with it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to address it. I want to kind of just like, if I can just ignore it, I want to go back to watching the football game. I want to go back to doing anything else in life that can preoccupy me because as I've analyzed it from afar, I'm like, I wonder why this individual is, they'll come to me for advice, but then kind of, I know that they're not going to take it. And then they don't, then they'll come back and be like, well, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? And I'm wondering, I think there's maybe like a bit of embarrassment there, right? There's a bit of regret. There's a couple of these things kind of merged together, right? That is preventing them from taking the steps. I'm like, dude, just like,
I call it the ostrich approach.
yeah,
They're sticking their head in the sand, and we don't get to be the ostrich, right? Because if your head's in the sand, you're not seeing what's coming. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, I don't know if it's unfortunate. The fortunate part, again, you can look at that either positive or negative, right? The fortunate part is we're changing so fast. The way people make money, and your book, the work we do, right?
Yep.
And
Love your work.
love your work. It's the space that it's changed. The dynamic of State Farm as the example. They would never, ever let somebody work from home until COVID.
And now everything's changed.
Now we have 100 and some odd thousand employees that are employees of State Farm. And they all went home for COVID. We've only gone back into the corporate office, which is in Bloomington, Illinois. They've only brought back like 25,000 people. Wow. We still have 100,000 people that work for us. But you think about all those facilities, all those office spaces, all those things, people are just still working from home. So the dynamic of how we work and how we produce income, and that's the other thing that I really talk about is, hey, what other things can you do to produce other income? Dave Ramsey talks about it with the snowball effect, but it can also work on the other side of the retirement, creating a snowball for your retirement. What other pieces can you do? What other, like our side gig, right? I love my career with State Farm, but I also love the side gig that I've produced with Bonvera and the playing the game to truly maximize another residual income proprietary, right? Something that's going to produce more income and take me to a whole nother level. And so
once you're an entrepreneur, you love to be an entrepreneur. You start thinking, you start seeing different angles. You're like, hey, I've got my full-time job here, and I've got this business here, and I've got this. You're hearing more and more people talking about, right? The need for multiple income streams and income streams that you're going to be able to, especially like if you've been in a manual labor, the people who really get this is someone who has been in a very difficult manual labor environment. And you're like, man, I'm making some great money. Maybe like you when you were 23 years old and you're having this construction and landscaping company, you're making great money, but like, dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this when I'm 70, right? It's like I've got a lifespan here or a target window where I'm young, I'm fit, and I can handle this hard work. But I need to find other ways in which, I can make income, where my money can make income, right? for multiple streams of income, because I'm not going to be able to do this backbreaking labor for the rest of my life.
100%. And that's a different perspective for a lot of people. And like you said, colleges are figuring it out. So now the general public gets to figure it out where, hey, maybe I go back to school, maybe I shift, maybe I figure out how to be an executive in a career where I'm using my head instead of my brawn, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's just a matter of people taking a hold of it and running with it.
And I tell you what, I've got so many more questions here for you, but I know that I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you're busy and probably have a line of people in your office waiting to chat with you. So we're going to definitely have a follow-up conversation on this, because I want to dive deeper into things that you're learning and seeing specifically in the investment space. I think you've given great advice for that young couple that's starting out in life, young individual versus, and also for people who are mid-career, late career. It's never too late to start. Ask the right questions. I'm a huge fan of the quote that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. And sometimes it can be difficult to humble yourself and walk into an office and say, hey, you know what? I don't know a lot about this. I need someone to help walk me through. When it comes to finances, that's an area that is still within society where people are very private. They don't like to a lot of times talk about, their finances or maybe the good decisions or bad decisions they've made. But this is definitely a spot where you need to ask the right questions and have somebody who's a trusted advisor kind of walk you through and kind of help you see, because there's so many different options. And you need to be able to pick the right option for you, for your family, for your loved ones on all these different things. I guess two final questions for you. Do you have in your mind, you've been in this space for a while, words of advice or caution? Maybe what is the red flag that someone should see, or maybe warning signs that there is a person who does not have an individual's best interest? Let's say, because we talked about this a little bit earlier, in every industry, there's great people, world-class individuals who are doing things the right way. Then there's also people who are just out for themselves and they don't have your best interests at heart. For that young couple who is navigating, right? Are there warning signs or things? Ask this question, or be wary if they come across an individual who is doing this, this, and this, because that might be a signal that they're more interested about their needs as opposed to that young couple who's sitting down doing a life plan.
Yeah. So if you're shopping and looking for insurance because that's the playground we're playing in, right? And they are just suggesting coverages to you without asking you questions about where you're coming from, what's important to you, all those pieces. Because it's unfortunately there are people in this space that they just have a cookie cutter product. Right?
One size fits all. Here you go. Just sign up, do this. You're good to go. Bada boom, bada bang. Let's move on.
Here's your premium. This is what we suggest. And you're like, well, you don't know anything about me. You don't know, where I'm living or all those pieces. How could you just give me a price on something that, you don't know if this is what I really need. You don't know if this is what I'm looking for, and unfortunately, if you ask most people, if you go through and say, so how did you pick your liability limits for your auto insurance? People will have no clue how they came up with the coverages that they have.
This is what was recommended to me. Yeah, I just checked the box.
This is all I got. Yeah. And to have that somebody sit down with them and explain to them what is the dynamic of what I've chosen, what are the consequences and the benefits, right? What are some of the pieces that I need to know on these things? That goes for your home insurance, that goes for your life insurance, and that goes for your investments in your retirement. There are some people out there in the investment world where they do a lot of trades. So they'll bring your money in and say, oh, it's you're not going to have any sales charge for bringing your money over. But then all of a sudden you're trading stocks 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year because, it's the new thing. It's the biggest new project. This is making gangbusters over here. Let's sell this and move over here. Well, they're
getting a cut on every trade.
And he's making a cut on the sale and then he's making a cut on the buy. So you get to be really careful on the guys that churn and burn, right? So it's just having a good solid relationship with those people and understanding where they're coming from, and then also understanding what you want to have happen in your life. With Chat GPT and all the things that are out there, there is so much great wisdom and great things that you can get your hands on today to really plug in a couple of factors and get what you need out of an insurance agent, a financial planner, and those type of brokers.
That's awesome advice. My next question for you, or last question, will be if you had resources. What are resources that you would recommend? Books, websites, social accounts, maybe people that you follow. If someone is wanting to learn more, get a little bit more intelligent in all this space, resources that you might recommend people. I'll tell you one that I did not know. I've followed Dave Ramsey over the years, and he is a expert in helping people get out of debt and live on a budget. I feel like his content is great content for a segment, but he only covers a very small segment in terms of, hey, how to get out of debt, get on a budget. There's so many others that in terms of investments and things like that I've enjoyed following. But I was really impressed with my son-in-law, Andy. I was spending some time with him up at Marshall University, and on his desk he had a book, and I had never heard of this author, but apparently it's a really big deal within the medical space, and I believe it's called The White Coat Investor. And it's a medical doctor who specifically writes and talks to other doctors about investments. And but he had this book on his desk, and I was flipping through this book, and I'm like, my goodness, this is an amazing book. And I ordered a copy for myself just because I was like, wow, this is really good content, specifically engineered, I think, for the doctor segment, medical profession. But do you have any people like this that you follow, or books that you've read that you're like, this is a great recommendation for people?
It's a bigger book, and you mentioned him earlier, Tony Robbins. Okay. I think it's Money, Master the Game.
Yes.
It's an absolute amazing book. He goes through and really breaks down the science and the theology behind money and the game, right? And how to play it. And I would tell people, if you're gonna jump into that boat, study the book. Don't just read it and put a check mark in the box. It will do you no good. There are some concepts in there that will completely fly over your head and maybe cause more confusion. But if you study it and learn the aspects of what he's teaching, it really does bring a good context to having a deeper, real good conversation with your financial broker and your insurance guys, right? Yeah. And then Tony Robbins, and he has a podcast as well that's really good. And then I'll get the name of another guy. He does some annuity work. He wrote the book Paycheck, Playcheck. Hold on, I'll actually look it up real quick here.
And while you're looking that up, one of the things that I would add to this is that one of the things that I found very useful for me in my career is, as I'm reading a book, getting together with a group of guys or a group of individuals to discuss that book, right? And just be able to be open and transparent, like, hey, what did you think about this? What did you think about that? I don't understand this concept. Help me unpack it. I feel like I'm a pretty well-read guy. I mean, I invest a lot of time in self-development in terms of reading, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts. I take a lot of notes. I mean, I'm not. This is not me just patting myself on the back, but you would have to work really hard. Someone would have to work really hard to kind of like study me, I believe, in terms of the amount that I spend on a daily basis doing it. And I scratch the surface. There's so much that I don't know, right? And so, I mean, I have to be humble enough to be like, yeah, I feel like I've read a lot. I feel like I'm a pretty educated guy. I don't know, come here from Sikkim on so many different topics where I've got to be like, hey, you know what? I just got to go to the expert. So if there's somebody out there that's listening, like, man, I'm embarrassed. I mean, I'm 30 years old, or I'm 55 years old, and I don't know this, I don't know that. I'm embarrassed to ask the question. Don't be embarrassed. that's you go ask the right individual, seek knowledge, be humble. That this is asking the right question can unlock so much potential in your life. So that would be my encouragement.
Yeah. So the author I was talking about was Tom Hegna, Hegna. He wrote a book called Paychecks and Paychecks, and nobody knows the retirement income planning better than his financial expertise. It is incredible, his dynamic way of sharing with people, and how he can help you truly get a better understanding on that, and developing a plan for the future to have. And he breaks it down, paychecks and playchecks. The paychecks take care of the essentials, your food, the gas, the water, those type of things. And then the playchecks, like you and I talked about a little bit ago, with, hey, I want to travel the world. I want to go on these trips. I want to do these things. So you have two dynamics of making sure your essentials are taken care of, and then making sure that you can have some fun while you're in that space, right?
Well, that's awesome. Well, it's a great place for us to end the pod, and we're definitely going to have you back on. But ending it on paychecks and playchecks, and Adam, all the advice that you've given us this afternoon is helping people make sure that they've got those bases covered early in their life. I mean, I wasn't anticipating that you were going to be sharing aspects and how you could actually get kids signed up on life insurance policies that would help pay for college education and retirement later on in life. You helped us uncover and see new aspects of this game and how to cover all the bases, pay for all of the essentials. And the great thing about that is when we do it, and we have we're going to live longer, and we're going to have multiple streams of income, and then people have abundance to be able to have the play checks, to be able to go and do the exciting things that they want to do, travel the world, have encore careers, help others in their life. I know for you and I right now, we've got laser sights on, helping our kids and our grandkids. And that's an interesting spot in life to be in, and so exciting. But I appreciate you as a friend. I appreciate you as an entrepreneur. And I appreciate you investing time with us today to share all these words of wisdom. And we'll definitely have you back on to glean some more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate the time, and love hanging out with you and spending time with you.
Oh, likewise, my friend. God bless. This was an informative conversation, and I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our guest, Adam Hancock. Adam, your perspective and insight helped me answer questions that I had about the right types of insurances for me and my family, and I'm sure it was helpful for our listeners as well. I still have many more questions I'd like to ask you, so I hope that you'll come back and join us in the future on another episode. None of this would be possible without our incredible tech team. A big shout out to Mitch White, whose editing skills make us sound seamless and professional, and to my daughter Tristan White, who is instrumental in creative direction and marketing and helping us put our best foot forward. To all of our listeners, I want to say thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Sharing this episode with your friends and leaving us a review helps us more than you know, and it's one of the best ways you can support us. Your feedback is invaluable and helps us grow and bring more content like this to you each week. We'll be back next week with another fascinating guest. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, keep listening. Take care, everybody.